see you all again. Today we're going to talk about something that's actually not that complicated, but can be quite useful to you as a photographer. So this is called bracketing. And you can bracket all kinds of different stuff. You can bracket your focus, you can bracket your white balance, but what we're going to focus on today is bracketing exposure. And once you understand bracketing exposure, you can pretty easily apply it to bracketing other aspects of your photography. So what is bracketing exposure? The basic key to that is that sometimes you're just not sure what the best exposure is. You're looking at your histogram, you're looking at your light meter, you're chimping the pictures, that's where you're checking the image quality on the back of the camera after you take it, and you're just not sure for whatever reason it is. So in that circumstance, the best thing to do is take several pictures in a systematic kind of way that you can then compare later on in the computer when you're in a more controlled environment. Because we all know looking at the screen on the back of the camera is not necessarily the best way to tell. So how do you do that? The basic idea is you get the picture, the composition that you want as good as you can. If you've got a tripod, that's great, because that means that nothing's going to change once you start bracketing but the exposures. And you use the light meter. Rather than the histogram or something like that, just use the light meter, because that will not change depending on, that's not going to change whether you're looking through the optical viewfinder of a traditional DSLR or looking at the back screen or anything like that. So you set it to a perfect exposure according to the light meter, which may or may not be right, and that's why we're bracketing. And then you drop that down one stop underexposed, which depending on your camera is either 2 or 3 clicks. If you're going by thirds of a stop, then it would be 3 clicks. If every click is a half stop, then it's 2 clicks. So you go down to 1 stop underexposed, 2 stops underexposed. So you'll have pictures that are very dark, kind of dark, and gray at this point. So you've got your 1 normal shot, your 2 stops underexposed, and your 1 stop underexposed. And then you get the other side of the equation. You get 1 stop overexposed, and then 2 stops overexposed. And how you change that brightness is up to you, and it depends on the composition of the picture. The example you're going to see is basically a landscape kind of shot. So my priorities are keeping the ISO low and keeping the aperture as small as possible with as big a number as possible so I get everything in focus. So all I adjust is shutter speed there. But it may be something that you're shooting, something that's moving more, and you need to adjust, you got to keep the shutter speed and the aperture the same, then you adjust your ISO to make that happen. So just like we've been doing, there's more than one way to skin a cat, but you should focus on the systematic approach to the exposure. Is 2 stops under, 1 stop under, what the meter says is perfect, then 1 stop over, and 2 stops over. So let's take a look at how that works, and then we'll come back to the computer afterwards and take a look at some of our sample stuff. See the pictures that we shot, and see how they came out and decide which we like best. Okay, let's go. So now I'm going to take a series of pictures looking through the camera. About 10 minutes ago there was really nice mist, but I lost most of it. But we'll still see what we can get. So right now my light meter, which is on the right side of the screen, says that the exposure is just about right. But because I'm shooting into the sun, I don't know if that's very accurate or not. So my settings are 1/45 of a second, f/16 at ISO 100. I'm on a tripod, so I can basically mess with my shutter speed as much as I want because nothing's moving, including the camera. So I'm going to focus kind of about there, and then I'm going to fire off 1 shot. Let's make sure I'm shooting in single release mode. Fire off 1 shot, and then I'm going to go down. Sorry, I'm going to go, there's 1 stop underexposed. There's 2 stops underexposed. And I've turned off the setting that lets me see how bright the picture is getting by shooting, just so that I'm just relying on the light meter, which is what you'll probably be relying on most of the time when you're shooting through the viewfinder on your camera. So I got my 2 stops underexposed, and then I'm going to start slowing down the shutter to increase the brightness. 1 stop underexposed. Back to a regular exposure, which I've already shot. 1 stop overexposed. 2 stops overexposed. And that's really all there is to it. It's just getting that range. If you know you like your composition, you're giving yourself insurance there. So we can go back to the computer and take a look at what we got and see how it came out. All right, let's check it out. Okay, now we're back at the computer, so let's take a look at those bracketed images that we shot. We'll take a look right over here and see what we've got. So this is the first one, what the camera thought was a good exposure. And looking at the histogram, you can see it's lost some of the data on the right. And you can see that also in the picture. Looking up here in the background, the sky is just kind of a pure white. The next one is the 2 stops underexposed. And then we get all the orange of the sky. And we also notice some of the dust on my sensor that I need to clean off. But we're losing some of the detail on the ground. And then we get 1 stop underexposed, which might be a safer bet because it's got a little bit more detail in the ground, and it still shows you a little bit of that corona from from the sky, the detail there. And then we do the overexposed ones, and this looks pretty good on the ground now. And then 2 stops overexposed is pretty bright. Based on what I know from editing, I actually might want to go with this way underexposed one because I know it's easier to boost shadows than it is to bring back highlights. So if I did a gradient filter here, so I'm only going to apply brightening to the bottom stuff and then it's going to fade out there, I can bring that exposure up in here. And then maybe dehaze a little bit. The whole thing. We can start to mess with the overall exposure. Yeah, there's quite a bit I can pull out of that one, the shadows. So that one gives me the maximum flexibility. And I never would have thought shooting there that, oh, I'll do that whole, the 2 stops underexposed. I mean, I might have because I'm used to that kind of thing, but this gives me that option to see which ones give me the most flexibility. Where can I pull out the most from my exposure? And that's pretty much all there is to bracketing. So your assignment is to put your 5 bracketed pictures into the slideshow and give me the settings, just like you've done before, only it's, this time I've been saying over and over again, 5 of the same picture slightly different doesn't count. This is the time that 5 of the same picture slightly different is exactly what I want. So slap those in there and tell me what your settings were and pick which one is best, and that'll be cool.